Today, I'm delighted to welcome Claudia Roberts to the podcast. Claudia was introduced to me and recommended as a guest by one of our former guests, Emma Levin. Claudia is currently midway through her traineeship with Mills Reeves, the award-winning national law firm. Prior to commencing her traineeship, Claudia had studied law at the University of Cardiff, graduating in 2011, before spending 3 years as a centre manager with Explore Learning, the leading provider of after-school tuition for 4 to 16-year-olds. She then worked as a senior education worker with the Into University, who are an award-winning charity that run local learning centres which provide education programmes to address underachievement and social exclusion. Claudia then made the jump into self-employment, launching a personal development and career advice website, alongside offering freelance digital marketing services, and combining all of this with a part-time role with Kate and Tom's, who provide luxury self-catered properties throughout England and Wales. And then Claudia decided that the law was the place that she wanted to be, and she completed her LPC course between 2020 and 2023 before commencing her traineeship in 2023. So Claudia, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to speak to us today.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me, Callum.
We've caught up prior to this, and we kind of explained what we were trying to do in some of these episodes, and this one really came about with, I think, trying to showcase different routes into law and the different career paths people have taken, and the wonderful side journeys and different paths that are open to graduates through to fully qualified lawyers. But one of the things I really like to do is, after giving the very whistle-stop tour of where you are just now, is to understand where you've come from. And I think with that, it's always great to go all the way back. So I appreciate you went to university in Cardiff, but are you from Cardiff, or was Cardiff a whole new place?
Yeah, Cardiff is a whole new place. So I grew up in Buckinghamshire, just outside High Wycombe. And so that's very 30 minutes outside of London. So a lot of time was spent there. And also quite in the countryside. So a lot of my childhood was spent in not rural, but lots of fields and walks and things like that. So quite different to Cardiff. But I did have a lot of time. My granddad's Welsh, so we'd go to Wales for holidays all the time. So that's probably one of the decisions factored into my decision to go there.
Wasn't a complete unknown.
No.
And growing up in Buckinghamshire, was law something that you'd been thinking about, or were you quite good at English and your teachers pushed you towards it's a good degree?
No, to be honest, from when I was a lot younger, I was mainly interested in things to do with animals. So I wanted to be a vet for ages. And then at secondary school, I then was a lot more interested in, writing, English, history. So teachers didn't really push us. They very much let us choose what we wanted. And actually, initially, I was thinking of doing Spanish and sociology. And then I decided that I wanted to do something a bit more, I don't know, it was led to a particular career, say, and had that real world application isn't the right word because Spanish obviously does, but professional application maybe is the right word. So I kind of changed quite last minute in my application process to go from Spanish and sociology to law and sociology. And the sociology was just because I really enjoyed the human part of geography, and I thought it would be similar to that. So it was, sociology was kind of an interest, and then law was me trying to be a bit practical and thinking what I wanted to do after. And I maybe in year 8 and 9 was quite interested in law, but then actually by the time it came to sixth form, I wasn't really set on it. It just seemed like something that'd be quite interesting to do and different because I hadn't studied it at school at all.
And forgive my ignorance, but I'm going to blame my Scottishness in this.
No.
So years 8 and 9, are you about 14, 15?
Earlier, 13, 14, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So start thinking about it then. GCSEs, is law GCSE, or did you do...
Yeah, I think it can be, but it wasn't a choice in my school. So I did history, geography. I as my option Spanish, and then dance, which I've never used again.
Okay, and then you do sixth form,
Yeah.
and at sixth form, is that when you do your kind of three A level
Yes,
type thing?
exactly. Yeah. So then it was four for the first year and three for the second year. So I did English language and literature, geography, history, and Spanish for the first year of sixth form, and then went down to that was AS levels, and I went down to three A levels of English language and literature, geography, and Spanish.
Okay. And with the sort of UCAS looking at university type things, um, did you just apply to law and sociology courses? And if so, how many? Was it kind of all over the UK type thing, or did you really focus in on Cardiff?
Good question. I can't remember all of them that I applied for. I think I applied for some up north, but didn't just have them on there because I didn't want to go too far from um, my family. But I think the main contenders were between Cardiff and the University of Sussex in Brighton. I think in hindsight, actually, I probably
Okay.
wanted to be by the sea from those two choices. And I remember visiting both of them, and I just felt that I felt more comfortable in Cardiff, like the atmosphere and everything just felt more aligned to me and felt a bit more like home as soon as I went there, which is nice.
Oh, brilliant. And did you go for the kind of open days and stuff like this before
Yes,
um,
yeah,
agreeing to turn up for 3 years?
yes, exactly. So I remember I only went to those two open days. I went to an open day at the University of Sussex and an open day at Cardiff. And actually, I think as well, one of the reasons why I went for Cardiff because it was within the city. And from memory, Sussex was like a campus outside of Brighton, so it felt like its own little town. Whereas I quite liked
Yeah,
kind of being within the city and feeling part of everything going on as well.
really. And in terms of your kind of family and when you're going into university,
Mm.
um, were you one of the first people in your family to go to uni? And if so, or if not, was
Mm.
it, was there any sort of push or influence for doing that vocational type of degree?
Yeah, I think my family background's quite interesting. So my dad's English and my mum's from Singapore. So originally she was born in India and then moved to Singapore as a child. So on my mum's side, no one had gone to university. My aunt is a teacher in Singapore and had gone to college after, but not a university level qualification. And my mum has not a person who's interested in education at all, like it's not high in her value system. Like she's obviously proud of me and my sister who's doing a PhD at the moment, but not no pressure from her whatsoever. Wouldn't have cared at all. Um, and then my dad, the complete opposite, to be honest. So he went to uni. He was an engineer. He's retired now, and he was very, yeah. If I said I didn't want to go to university, then he wouldn't have been happy about it at all. Um, and so I did have a really good benefit of him knowing. I think I can see the contrast from people who, if I had just my mum compared to having my dad influence as well, I could see how much of a benefit that was to me in my university applications, all through my education, like someone who knows the UK education system, knows exactly what would be valued, how to approach it. And so that was, yeah, of real help to me. And interestingly, as we go through my story, my dad is very happy now that I'm doing law, but there was definitely times when I there was a lot of like, what
Where
are
he was
you
questioning.
doing? Yes.
To be fair, I guess that's the role of parents occasionally, isn't it? Just
True.
to hope that everything will be all right, but occasionally question.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, having that background and having a bit of, by the sounds of it, actually really quite a balance between, not a dogmatic, you must go to university and etc., but having access to somebody like your dad, by the sounds of it. When you get there, was university what you expected?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think that it was. Then I don't know. I feel like because it was such a path, like I hadn't really questioned. I was like, right, I'm going to go. It's more choice of what I'm going to do rather than. whether I'm going to go.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and I also had a year out between school and uni, so I worked at a bank for like 6 months and then travelled for a bit. And I think maybe my experience would be different if I'd gone straight out of school, because maybe it was like I had a bit of freedom and then having to go back into education. But I found the transition quite hard. I think also like coming from school, which I really enjoyed and felt like I was really part of a strong community and knew everyone. It was quite a shock suddenly going in and just being like so many new people. And
Mm.
also, I think just having like law at uni is not as structured as some other courses, so you aren't as in as much. So I think not having that really structured environment to meet people. Like I was lucky, I lived with really nice people, but it was quite hard for me to make friends in that first year on my course. It's only in the second year when I pushed myself to join a few more societies and things that I then felt more comfortable.
Okay. And when so with Cardiff, as you mentioned, it's in the city centre.
Mm.
But in the first year, did you go in? Do they have halls and things like this? So you kind of have some social
Exactly.
framework.
So that was really nice. So having the halls and the social framework there was really nice. And yeah, that made it a lot easier. But still, it felt like there were more people that I didn't know than I did know, which was the,
Yeah.
the challenge.
And how big was your in terms of your law class? I mean, are we talking a couple hundred people or
Yeah,
more or less?
yes, probably 200 people, I think. Like, it was quite
Right.
big.
And was that similar to the sociology, just out of interest?
No, the social. Oh,
Sorry.
sorry, trying to cast my mind back now. I think it was. I remember the lectures being quite big, but then there was a lot more. I think there were maybe less lectures and more like tutorials, which were smaller groups. It felt like I was in smaller groups and more time in the sociology aspect than in law for some
In the
reason.
law class. And looking back now, if you were controlling law at Cardiff, and because you've had that experience of the legal
Mm.
training versus the sociology approach, would there be anything that you pick from the sociology approach and apply to the legal way that they're teaching, or was it simply the subject matter meant that the approach that they had adopted was
Mm.
kind of the de facto one that you have to adopt?
I wonder if it was more, and it also did vary between subjects. And as I progressed through my law degree, and when you choose electives, the groups became smaller, so it then did feel more
Mm.
in line with the sociology side of things. So I don't think so. I think it's probably the nature of um, of it. But I have spoken to people at university now, and maybe at different universities, and I think I would have enjoyed law in a more university where it's taught more practically,
Mm-hmm.
more because I think it was just very very academic. Um, and even though I wanted that practical application, I didn't quite get it. I don't think there. Whereas actually, I was speaking to people at uni now, and I think at some universities there's a lot more of a push to make it more practical and have those like professional applications from the
Okay,
authors.
interesting,
Mm.
interesting. And I'm jumping ahead slightly, but
Yeah,
did that partly influence the decision not to go straight into a legal career?
I think in hindsight, I don't think at the time I was aware of it, but I think in hindsight it probably did, because at the same time I was involved in different societies at uni. I was doing lots of volunteering, and I enjoyed that a lot more. So I think you're right. I think subconsciously I was a bit like, oh, I don't want to commit to this right now because I'm not 100% sure that it's for
Yeah,
me.
and as part of that, because from speaking to people doing this podcast and just outside,
Mm,
um, my understanding of the English system is
mm,
generally that people apply for summer placements and things like this in the summer between second and third year, because you tend in your undergraduate, then hopefully that puts you in the 2 year
yeah.
cycle for traineeships and stuff like this. So coming into that summer, um, did you look at summer placements and vacation schemes, or had you taken a decision that whilst you were studying law, you weren't going all out to to end up qualifying and becoming
Yeah.
a kind of career lawyer, if I can put it that way.
So I did. I can't remember why I didn't go. I remember I didn't apply for any like traditional vacation schemes, like at, for example, firms like Mills and Reeves. I can't quite remember the order of that summer, but what eventually happened is so I was part of a society called Isaac, which is amazing. It's like an international organisation, and they
Mhm.
arrange. Have you heard of it?
Nope.
No.
Please enlighten
Yeah.
me.
And sorry, I was part of a society called Isaac, and it is an international organisation, and they organise internships. So, for example, I was part of the organisation in Cardiff. So half of us would arrange internships, like do BD in the local community and try and get internships. Um, and then I was on the side where I would advertise to Cardiff students and try and recruit them so they can go do an internship in another country.
Okay.
And then as part of that, they had a summer program where the flights were sponsored by HSBC to go and work in a different or part of the organisation in a different country. So I was really
Mhm.
lucky and I got to do that. And I went to Argentina for 3 months that summer. So I can't remember whether I knew that before and therefore didn't apply or whether it was, I can't remember.
I think
Um,
genuinely, I think that's the best reason for not applying
yeah.
for a summer vacation scheme I've ever heard. I was in Argentina for 3 months. Okay, fair enough.
And what I did do around Easter time, I did do a week work experience with a firm in Oxford and another week with the Crown Prosecution Service. So I did do
Mhm.
some work experience at that stage as well.
And how did you find those? I mean, a week is obviously very short, and I imagine a week in a law firm is very, very different to a week with the CPS. But was it something that you found valuable? Was it something that you thought, actually, I don't want to be a lawyer after doing this week? Or, you know,
So yeah, two different experiences actually. So I had thought before that I wanted I was really interested in the criminal side of things. And then after a week with the Crown Prosecution Service, it's definitely like, no, this is not for me. It was really interesting, but it was just having to be in the same room of people who are then going to be convicted of really horrible things. And I just don't have the emotional resilience for that. And then the other firm was a commercial firm. And actually, I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I would. And I almost had like a mini seat in each different department in the morning and afternoon. So I got to see a
oh,
really wide
brilliant.
variety. Yeah. And actually, I did seriously. I remember I had that application for the training contract at the end of that summer printed out and started filling it out, and then decided not to.
Okay, so talk me through that. You graduate and you end up in, I assume, your sort of early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
becoming a manager, dealing with a team of up to 15 people.
Mm.
How how on earth did you end up in that role in that sector and going, you know what, yeah, I can do all of this, that's fine.
um, I had always volunteered for children and young people from when I was like 16 at school and really, really enjoyed it. So that was always something that I was interested in doing. Um, and I think, being completely honest, there was an element at that time where it was just after the financial crash, and all of my friends from school had graduated the year before because I took the year out and they hadn't,
Yeah,
and were really struggling to find any kind of graduate roles. So it was also, I remember just being like, right, I just want a role that uses that
yeah.
is like a graduate role that I can feel like I've done the degree for a purpose. Um, so I saw the scheme being advertised, and it was with education, which I was interested in from having done the volunteering experiences previously. And also from that Isaac organisation, I became involved in business, which I had no interest in before. Um, and this looked to kind of combine those two interests.
Mhm.
And also, it felt like something. My intention was to do it for a few years and get some different experience, do something different, save up some money, and then go and do the LPC. Um,
Okay.
um, and it sounds like a big step up, but because they just had such an amazing training program and such amazing support, like you were you never felt like you were thrown in the deep end. Like it always felt like a natural progression to take on more responsibility, and you felt really prepared for like when you did eventually were the sole manager and everyone managing everyone at the centre and or being responsible for like the children's welfare, relationships with the parents. It didn't feel like a big shock, like it was challenging, but I've always felt like I had the support and the knowledge to do it. So yeah, the confidence didn't come from within me. It was given to me.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it sounds like they gave a framework to allow you to sort of flourish,
Yes.
as it were.
Yeah.
And is that something that you've managed to kind of take into subsequent roles? Sort of going, actually, they did this bit really well, and replicate.
Definitely. I think that has kind of been the gold standard for training, to be honest, in every job that I've done since. Um, when I've been training people, I then try and use what I've learned in that role. But also things like really good um, like customer service training as well. Like we'd have specific trainings on that and um, motivating people as well. Like they would kind of bring in the academic theory but teach it in a really fun way. So there's stuff from that that has stuck with me. Um, and I
And
definitely still use it now.
given that you're sort of saying it was the gold standard, I
Mm.
mean, what did they do that? What, was it the approach that they adopted? Was it reinforcement? What was it that made it so good? And for anybody listening to this, perhaps that they can try to replicate if they've got teams and things like this.
Yeah, I think it's just there was such an understanding on the value of proper training and coaching. Um, so you would have it would be very structured as well. So literally at like 3 months, you'd be booked onto a training course, say on um, client service, and then at the end of that day, you would go away with specific actions that you need to put into place in your centre. You would have like I think it's called a personal development planner, and then literally had everything
Yep.
in there. So you would have to get everything signed off once you demonstrated particular skills or done a particular experience. And then in your centre as well, you would have when you first start the centre manager and when you're a centre manager, the regional manager who would come in and do specific coaching with you. There was also like for sales, they kind of had people in head office with areas of expertise, and they would come and use their time to spend like a day with you, just coaching you through things. And I think everyone had proper coaching training as well, so that made a really big difference but when people were managing you, it wasn't like they had a really busy job and were trying to fit in training you around that. It was like they prioritized training you as much as um, their day-to-day
Yeah,
work, and that was kind of what was
that's
expected.
fantastic.
Mm.
That is fantastic. I mean, I'm quite interested to hear what your experience is like now that you're in a traineeship. I mean, speaking purely personally, I was very lucky at the firm that I trained with, in the office of that firm in particular, because it was very focused on one industry, and
Mm.
you'd have regular training and things like this, and you'd be able to embed yourself in that industry.
Nice.
But it was certainly something when I worked in other offices of that firm, it was not replicated at all. And
Okay.
you could kind of see that. I think kind of informally, in that market, recruiters, for example, if they were recruiting for in-house jobs,
Mm.
that firm and how well they brought people on meant that if they were recruiting for like a 4 to 6 year qualified, they
Hmm.
would recruit an NQ from that firm,
Wow,
because it was
that's
deemed
amazing.
like they were deemed to be that well embedded and well
Yeah,
trained up type thing, which
incredible.
such a ringing endorsement,
Mm.
but also seems to be relatively rare in
Mm.
the broader legal
Mm.
sector, where it was one thing you mentioned actually, was the sort of dedication and focus on the training, because I think
Mm.
quite often it can be very difficult, if you've got a fee earner hat on and
Yeah,
you're trying to hit whatever billables you're hitting,
exactly.
and training up not
Yeah,
just a trainee but possibly junior associates and things like this, and
yeah,
providing the things. But we may well come on to that. Okay, so that was with the Explore Learning.
yeah.
Then you move into university,
Hmm.
and were they linked, or was it an entirely separate?
It's entirely
entity that?
separate, but very similar. Just that was a charity basically. So I just had, as I said, I'd done lots of volunteering before, so I wanted to do a similar thing, but with for a charity and where there's no profit involved and just purely giving back for a couple of years, which is good. It was such a great experience. It's so nice. You got to build really strong bonds with the community that you worked in. And it's very much like they do it as like almost 2 years, and then if you want to do something else after 2 years, then they'll support you with whatever you want to go on and do.
Okay.
So with that in mind, I had, before going into that, thought about, like I'd always really enjoyed writing, so I started doing things like blogging and had started working on the website that I built before, and also the same with the digital marketing side of things. Like it was kind of linked, like I had to learn it for this blogging hobby that I had, and then I quite enjoyed it as well.
Mhm.
So it wasn't, it seems like a big jump at the end of 2 years working for a charity, but actually I had been doing it the whole time through and kind of got to the end of those 2 years and had the website with like quite a lot of people following it and had enough
Mhm.
confidence in, like I had evidence of using those digital marketing skills on my own website that I felt that I could.
Yeah, you had a kind of proof of concept. It wasn't
Exactly.
just a blind, oh, this will
Yeah.
be fine.
Yes. So that's definitely not my best one yet. I couldn't cope with that.
And just out of interest, was this the point that your dad was like,
What
Claudia?
are you doing? Yeah. What is this? Definitely. um, yeah, but it was really, really good experience. I enjoyed the freedom, but actually that is the part that I found the hardest, of kind of going from
Interesting.
a lot of structure to then suddenly, I've always been able to motivate myself, but it was not having anyone else there to motivate and kind of be in that experience with that I think I found tricky. And,
Mm.
and that was why I then got a job part time at Kate Tom's, kind of like a year after leaving into university. Um, but I just learned so much. Like I think it really, really helped with my commercial awareness because it's not like you're having a theoretical understanding of how a business works. You're actually having to like making sure that you have the cash flow coming in to pay your bills at the end of the
Yeah,
month. Like, so, and then the client service is no brand to like build any reputation. It's literally you and
it's you.
the client.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the other bits that, from speaking to people that have set up their own businesses,
Mm.
um, it is ultimately different when it's yours, and
Mm.
it's, your reputation, it's your baby, as it were, that you're building. And even if you are an incredibly dedicated employee, it still feels
Mm.
slightly different when it's your
Yes.
stuff. I mean, was that something that you found when you were doing that part of your
Yeah.
career, basically?
Yeah. Definitely. I felt like it was a lot harder to draw a line for me between like when work finished, and
Yeah.
I mean there wasn't really there's not for me there wasn't really much of a line, because you're always thinking you can't there's no one to go to ask for. Well, I had like kind of people that are almost like mentors in, and I
Mhm.
got to know who also had their own business. So it was good to speak to them, but still it was very much hard for me to switch off during that time as well, because it is, like you said, it's you, and the kind of brand is you as well, which I found a bit tricky to have to give so much of myself to something, and
Mm.
I wasn't very good then at having kind of a line.
And did that influence you to take the jump back to going into to do the LPC and start, I guess, or restart that process of ultimately doing a traineeship to then become a qualified lawyer?
Yes, so kind of a missing piece between that is while I was still working for myself, I was working part time for Kate and Tom's, and
Yep.
I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed being around people, working in a team again. It really made me realize how much I value being part of a team, like having that contrast literally in the same week. Um,
Yep.
so I kind of within that time adjusted. Like, it was just amazing flexibility, to be honest. Like I adjusted, so I took more hours with them and less for myself until I was just doing it for them.
Right.
And in that role, I supervised a, a team of people. And before COVID, the role was helping people book holidays. So it was so nice. Like occasionally things went wrong, like when I was working on a weekend and you had to deal with them. But it was definitely more positivity and less things going wrong. And then I think it is a kind of universal thing that people just got a lot angrier during COVID. And I definitely noticed that. So that was quite hard working from home and having to take on a lot of that. But again, you had the team to decompress with, and that role was basically, it evolved a lot while I was working there as well. So by the end of it, I was helping to resolve disputes between guests and owners. So if something went during their stay, like there was damages or a complaint, then working between the two parties to resolve that. Which again is just really amazing experience, because literally you have to be on the phone to one and then the other and kind of mediate between them and find a solution. So it was definitely really, really challenging, but I really enjoyed it as well. And then it was kind of while I was doing that, like I really, really enjoyed it, but I knew that I wanted to do something. By that point, I feel like I tried loads of things that I really wanted to do, had amazing experiences, but I really wanted to do something that was really going to be challenging me for a long time, rather than just challenging for a few years and I'm like, oh, okay, I want to do something else now. And I also, that aspect at Kate and Tom's of working with clients, I knew I definitely wanted to involve working with clients in a team. And I did like that. Like at the point when you got to resolve the dispute and between the two and there's like a positive outcome. And then obviously, because I had done law at university, then thinking that probably would be the most logical step. So then I went back, and it changed a lot. And since I kind of last looked at it, I remember when I graduated, you had to do the LPC within 7 years of graduating. But luckily that changed. I wouldn't have been able to do it. And exactly. And then I don't like to make decisions about a lot without some evidence. So I had just kind of was thinking about this before the vacation scheme deadlines closed that year. So I just applied to a few over that Christmas, and literally whoever was still open. And I got to an assessment centre for one of them. And that just gave me a bit of confidence to be like, right, I'm not going to completely waste my money if I start the LPC. Like, obviously, if I can get to the assessment centre at this point, then it just gave me a bit of confidence to kind of make that.
Yeah, of course. So with the LPC then, presumably you self-funded it rather than having a traineeship lined up that would.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, so that must have been quite a managed risk, shall I say?
Yeah.
It's a big investment, and if you didn't have that guarantee of a traineeship at the end of it, so is that something that I guess how did you get comfortable with that? Because I imagine more and more graduates are getting to that point of going, what do I do here? I'm coming out potentially from 3 years worth of university debt. It is a requirement. I know they're opening up different routes, sort of apprenticeship, traineeships and stuff like this, which is potentially great. But if you're going down a traditional route, it is an investment. For you, how was that? How were you able to get to the point of getting comfortable with it?
Yeah. So I think what I just mentioned about going through those applications before committing to it, and having got good feedback from that assessment centre and kind of actionable points from it, I felt like that really helped with me to manage the risk. Like I felt if I'd done all those applications and not even got an interview, then I would have rethought it. But because I had got through the interview, got to the assessment centre and had like good feedback for the most of it, with points that I could feel that I could work on. And one of the things that came up in the interview actually was quite rightly, the partner quite kind of kindly questioned my commitment to law, which I can completely see why. So actually, I felt that part of the manager's risk was me committing to do that LPC just showed that I had some skin in the game as well. So they took a chance
Yeah.
on me. It's not just me choosing to do it on a whim, like I am committed to this. And I would also start to build up my legal experience again. So the main thing that I did was volunteer for the Citizens Advice Bureau. Like, as I said, the job I had with Kate and Thomas was amazingly flexible. So it was fine for me to do, like, it was weekends as well. So it was easy to do a day during the week with the Citizens Advice Bureau. Just to, again, test. It's kind of like double, like you're at the same time confirming your own choice whilst also showing evidence,
Be
your experience.
ultimately being more employable as
Yeah.
well. Okay. And when did you, was it 2020 that you started the LPC?
Yes. So at the beginning of the year is when I had decided to, no, end of the year before, end of 29, so I was to go back to consider going back into law, applied for those vacation schemes. And my intention at the beginning of 2020 was to look for like a paralegal role or a more legal related role. Obviously, COVID's kind of through
Yeah. A
that.
slight hiccup.
But I had been volunteering since Bureau since October 2019. So by the time, I think I only applied for LPC like this summer. So it was like what I was initially, my initial sensible plan isn't going to happen. So what can I do instead?
And given that this is 2020, so by summer, from memory, we were out of lockdown
Mm.
and we could move around. What was the course set up to be done remotely anyway, or was it one that had been in person and then kind of mildly frantically reimagined into
Yes.
a remote option?
Yeah. So it was in person, technically. So I'm really glad they did this. I think they had the first weekend in person in September 2020 when things were still like in that brief respite, and that was really nice because I got to meet other people on the course, and then throughout this, I just remember it being a very dark winter of being at home the whole time. I did it one weekend a month, so it was like 2 full days from like
Okay.
8:30 to 6:30 of tutorials, yeah, which was really challenging at home in front of the computer. So it was nice to have those people that we can kind of message and ask questions to along that period. But then they were quite strict, which I think was a good thing I think it might have been from the summer 2021. So for the period where we did we had like 3 months of doing some electives, and then definitely the whole of the second year because I did it part time, was all in person, and that was so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you find the LPC, was that the more practical training that you'd kind of hoped for at the undergraduate level?
Yes, exactly that. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much more than undergraduate law because it's just really, really practical, really interesting. And everyone that taught us had been in practice, so they brought everything to life and illustrated it with their experiences and just gave us really practical tips. Um, yeah, it was a completely different experience. I way preferred it.
Brilliant. And did you find that the LPC um, prepared you for the traineeship with Mills and Reeves?
Mm.
Or again, was that one that was another sort of step change, as it were?
I actually think it did more than I thought it would. I think it's more like it just gave me a really good base, and then it's just as always like adjusting it to each supervisor how they like things. But definitely, especially with things like research, like that was really really helpful. Research like writing, um, and also just yeah like understanding. So skipping a step at the end of because I funded it myself, I did it as a master's, so you could get the loan from there's a master's
Okay.
postgraduate loan from the government. I don't know how it works with SQ now; it's changed. Um, so I had to do a dissertation at the end of it. So it ended up being 3 years because the third year was a dissertation. but that was really helpful because I had to do so much independent research for that and really understand using like PLC, which
Mhm.
is just so helpful. Like when I then went into being a trainee, I was like, oh, I'm used to like spending hours trying to work out what I'm doing on here. That's not as much station, so I can do this.
And what was your dissertation on?
So I did it on so it was on sustainability clauses in supply chain contracts. And so because I had a year between finishing my LPC and starting my training contract, I just looked for a contract role and just to have a full-time income coming in. And I managed to get one, um, which I've really been interested in for a while for some reason. It's working for a company that imports fruit into the UK, so it was supporting a buyer and literally doing all of the imports, like working with Incoterms. So there's a lot of
Yep.
familiarity and things that I did in my in the commercial module on the LPC, and so I kind of used a bit of the knowledge that I had gained from that. So I did it for supply chain contracts for um, the supply of fresh fruit in the UK. So it was looking at how effective um, they are. It was really interesting. It was nice to be able to choose a
Brilliant.
topic completely based on your own interest.
Absolutely. And very practical compared to,
Yes.
I mean, I'm trying to think what my undergraduate dissertation was, but it definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
It was more an academic level of
Yeah.
law that I'm pretty sure I will never, ever, ever use. Okay, so I mean, one of the things for me that from just listening to the way that your sort of story today and all of the incredible variety of things that you've done, I'd be really interested now that you've got your feet under the table
Mhm.
and are in a law firm advising clients and things like this. How much of the 10 years prior do you think has um, helped you when you're then applying that experience in the context of giving legal advice to clients?
I think it's invaluable. Um, so I think it's kind of a slightly different question in the context of giving legal advice to clients in that situation. And I think it's just having an understanding of what they're having to go through, like on their side. Like I've seen how different organisations work and know they can be dealing with so many different things on their ends, like be it politics or loads of pressure or it not being simple to actually get something done. There's a whole process internally that they have to go
Yeah.
through. So I think I could be more empathetic and understanding with clients. It helps as well. Like last week, I was helping on a supply chain agreement, and actually, it was just easier for me because a lot of the terms I was familiar with from having worked in that environment and the process.
Mhm.
So there's a lot, like practically in that really specific instance, it really helped. Also, I
Yeah.
think it just gives me a better understanding of um, what clients are having to work with and how it might be different from client to client. And then as a trainee as well, like just I think it's helped me so much um, because I feel like I'm able to focus on like learning the really specifics to how a law firm works and like billing and estimating things for clients and then the actual specifics of the law. Whereas I feel I know that I have the skills of client service or like using all of the IT and Teams and Outlook are there already. So I think it has definitely helped so much. Just give me a bit of a running start.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
that makes complete sense. I
Mm.
always feel slightly sorry for kind of brand new trainees that have maybe followed a slightly more traditional path of
Mm.
school, university, LPC, straight in, and particularly for those that have gone through COVID.
Yes,
In my last place, we had some summer students, and they basically had their entire university at home.
so
Um,
difficult.
so you're kind of taking essentially a 17-year-old
Yeah.
and putting them for the first time ever into a workplace, and they've not even had the chance to sit through lectures and
Yeah.
have that time at university to just sort of grow and develop, and it was really noticeable. Just kind
Mm.
of the complete it's a bad phrase, but the soft skills side of
Yes.
things. One of my old bosses renamed it power skills, which I think is brilliant. But
That is.
those kind of interaction bits, and there's just this gap. And from what I've seen from
Mm.
not just that generation, but more experienced lawyers that have gone into industry and done different things,
Mm.
that kind of ability to speak to people, ability to empathize, like you say,
Mm.
but also the ability to focus on what matters,
Mm.
because you have a context that
Yes.
otherwise you wouldn't have. You know what it actually takes to bring in fruit and veg from a country outside of the UK, actually get it in and get it to a supermarket on time without it perishing.
Yes.
You can understand
Yes.
that chain because you've seen it. And it's one of the things that I think comes up quite often when I've been speaking to junior lawyers, but also speaking to more senior lawyers that take to do
Mm.
with training. And one of the things, and you mentioned it earlier, it was commercial awareness.
Mm.
And it's this wonderfully broad, undefinable thing of what do we mean by commercial awareness.
Mm.
But from the way, from your experience and what you've been telling us, I think that's a perfect example of commercial
Mm.
awareness, whereby you've got, whether it's luxury self catered accommodation
Mm.
through to the education sector, through to fruit and veg, just having that understanding and exposure to business,
Yeah.
whatever the business, um, I think, well, in my opinion, at least, helps massively.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting. And so, where you are now, you're halfway through your traineeship.
Yeah. Correct.
Um, and when we caught up before we recorded this, you mentioned Mills and Reeves do a slightly, or for me, it was a slightly different
Yes.
approach to training. So, can you just explain what that is? Because it might be interesting to others to know, because it seems to get very good feedback.
Yes, definitely, and it's definitely one of the main reasons why I applied to Mills Reeves. So rather than doing 4 seats over 2 years, we do 6 seats over 2 years. So each seat is 4 months, and so that means even though I'm only coming to the end of my first year, I've already come to the end of my third seat. So I've done construction disputes, corporate, and I'm in the commercial seat now. And then in September, I'm going on to employment. Um, and I think, obviously, I haven't done the alternative to compare it to, but what I found really beneficial is I still feel in 4 months it goes quickly, but you do get a really good feel for what it is like to work in each area, and a good feel for the team. And definitely, I think after 2 months, you kind of know whether it's something that you might like to do. Um, and it, so you, I don't feel there's a downside to doing shorter seats, but it does mean as well that you get exposed to more of the business, which I think is good
Yeah.
from a personal level because you can try more seats and hopefully make a more informed decision at the end of the 2 years. Also, you get a better understanding of the business as a whole because you're seeing how different teams work, the different meeting different clients, and we do a lot of sector-based work as well. So you're able to work in different sectors, but interestingly, different sectors. Well, the same sector but in different areas of law as well, which is
Yeah.
interesting to
And
contrast.
and so Mills and Reeves is obviously a national firm, so it's
Mm-hmm.
got, I don't know how many offices. I didn't do my research properly enough, but a number throughout the UK. In your traineeship, are you attached to just one office and go round multiple departments, or do you have location flexibility as well, or indeed are any of the departments set up on a national basis? So your
Yeah,
supervisor could be in Manchester and you could be in London.
yeah, exactly that. So I'm attached to the Birmingham office, so that's where I work, and that's where my seats are. If you do want to do a specific seat that's not available in your office, then there is possibility to go and do another office. So we just had someone from the Cambridge office with us for the last 4 months in Birmingham. But then a lot of the teams are cross office as well. So the commercial team is. So exactly like you said, last week I was working on a matter with my supervisor in Manchester and me in Birmingham. I've worked with other supervisors in London, Norwich. So yeah, you get to, even if you're not in that office, you still get to meet people. And there are opportunities for like a day or so to go and work in different offices and have meetings and things like that. So it is really nice. It means that you get to know different people from different parts of the business, work with different supervisors and learn different things from them as well. And I think it does. I think it works well because the supervisors that I've worked with have made it work well. I can see how it might not if that effort's not put in. But for example, the supervisor I worked with over the last couple of weeks from Manchester we just have a Teams call and she would go through and talk through her thoughts while doing it. So rather than just sending me back like her comments or getting me to do a red line, whatever, it still felt like I was getting the benefit of her being next to me by just having that, putting that time in and taking the time to go through and discuss things. So yeah, I think it definitely works, but it's probably up to the supervising individual to make it work.
So I'm conscious of time because I don't want to keep you too long.
Yeah.
But there's two things I was hoping to cover and also we can conclude on. The first one, you're halfway through the traineeship. What are you hoping to achieve, get out of the second half of the traineeship?
That's a really good question. I think now it's more me feeling a bit more confident with giving legal advice to clients. Like I feel confident speaking to clients, but the actual having a call and going through what I think on things I still definitely want to work on that. So definitely improve my legal skills more, improve more the specific business management side of things. So like onboarding clients and setting up new maths and that kind of admin side of things. I've just started and it feels a bit overwhelming at the moment. It's just the matter management side of things. And then definitely continue with like just growing my network as well and meeting more people in Birmingham and as well continuing to get to know people in the firm and get involved in different initiatives outside of kind of my day job as well.
And then the second one is, given I think you have a fantastic, or you've had a fantastic route to where you've got to now, looking back, and for anybody listening to this that's perhaps going through something similar, having done it, is there any particular things that you would recommend, any pitfalls to avoid, or things that you have done that if you were going to do again, you would do exactly the same?
Yeah, I think I would actually do it all exactly the same because I've learned so much from it. And I just feel really confident in myself that this is what I want to do because I've tried so many. I feel like all the things that I had a bit of inkling, I've really enjoyed, learned so much from. So I don't have any feeling of the grass might be greener, if that makes sense. And also, I think the key piece of advice that I would have is not so easier said than done, but not to try and worry about the impact of decision you're having now. What the impact of decision that you're making now is going to have in like 5 years in the future. Like I think do it based on what you're interested in now, and it will then, if you're doing it based on what you're interested in, what you want to do, then it's likely going to come together anyway. Because I think it's so hard when you're leaving union and you feel like you're making this decision that's going to impact the entire rest of your life, but it doesn't have to be like that. It's about, I think there's so many transferable skills that you're going to get from anything that you do. So seeing it that way rather than this big life-changing, scary thing.
Listen, I think that is a brilliant point to end and a brilliant note to end on, because I do think there is a risk in the little bubble of law, whether it's at a studying level and an academic level, whether it's at the trainee level or once you're qualified. it is a bubble, and it's very easy to get sucked into the fact that it all feels, you know, it might be life or death,
Yes.
and realistically, often it's not.
No.
And if it is, something normally has gone very, very wrong.
Yeah. True.
But having having that little bit of separation and confidence that ultimately whatever you do, I think will positively impact
Mm,
going forwards.
definitely.
You have, whether it's life experience, whether it's, for example, I would have loved to be a trainee and known properly about Incoterms and what it's like in
Yeah.
practice. That would have made a number of months of my life a lot easier
Mm,
than trying to kind of get up to speed with it in a law office where you're not actually buying anything or supplying
yeah.
anything.
Yes.
um, so I just think that's a brilliant message to
Mm.
hopefully emphasise, and just from my perspective, say thank you very much, Claudia, for taking the time and doing this recording.
No problem. It was brilliant. Really enjoyed it.